And tonight we're going to tackle a topic that I think is very relevant to all of us. So I'll be sharing some of my experiences, and we'll have a look at three things. The main idea with tonight is to share some of the thoughts on how you can thrive. So it's moving from surviving to thriving, and that being another concept, not just surviving but thriving. And we will look at things like suffering and growing through trials, and what can you practically do to get yourself focused and to survive, but also end up thriving. And we'll have a look at what psychology says, and then also give a biblical view. Now, obviously, I can't delve into everything in 1 hour, but I will do my best to answer some of it, and we'll have follow-up discussions with this. I think this is a huge discussion. So suffering and dealing with suffering is a huge one. And then getting to the place where you can thrive. So psychology has some things to say about this, some helpful things, and the Bible definitely has a very helpful grid for Christians to take hold of. So the idea, and what I'm going to say summarized, is that suffering is here. It is part of life, and it can offer you opportunities to be broken or to grow. And in the end, you can do a lot of things in order to move towards growing and developing and benefiting from suffering, or you can also be deteriorating and as a consequence get a lot of additional trauma from suffering and end up being very damaged by it. Or it can change you to be more like Christ. So that's the bottom line, but there's obviously a lot of stuff to fill in there. Those are the two buns. Now I'll wait for the stuff in the middle. Okay, so 2020, I mean, a year of extreme uncertainty, causing a lot of uncertainty globally, financially, for people around you, business-wise. You did not know what to expect, isn't it? So a lot of things happened. People were fearing losing their jobs, suddenly thrown into difficult new situations, being at home with children, having to homeschooling. Some people even had to do music lessons for their children. They can't even play the music instruments. So we've seen all those WhatsApp videos. I mean, I enjoyed some of them a lot. And you've had to deal with a lot of new roles and health fears, right? The health scare. So then you get all of the different reactions from people. And in the end, COVID that was out there came closer and closer to my own life. So the suffering that was out there did not affect me initially that much. I was actually glad with lockdown, and it was a nice time. It was a relief to get all the benefits from lockdown, to be at home, not have to sit in traffic every day, not have to struggle with a rush hour and all those things. And it helped me a lot. And I actually had quality time with my family. There was financial pressures, but I experienced the Lord's faithfulness in providing. And it was a good year for me. So that's now part of my experience of it. It wasn't a good year for a lot of other people. So we've seen businesses close. We've seen a whole lot of trauma. And people were thrown into situations that they did not expect, were not prepared for, and then suddenly had to deal with, whether it be financial dilemmas and a crisis, or a health dilemma, or losing people to death. So part of my own experience of 2020, as you've now heard, and I'm going to share some of my story, is that it was lacquer initially, and I enjoyed the year, and I actually thought, wow, I've learned a lot, and I'm going to apply some of this into my life and try to adjust my routine and my rhythm and my schedule. But as the year ended and came to a close, we suddenly lost my mother-in-law, and she was like a mother to me. She was a wonderful person, close to our family, highly involved, almost a co-parent with our children, really involved in our lives. And we just celebrated her marrying again after losing our father-in-law and to death. So this was sudden, unexpected, and then we had family health problems with kidney transplant, and then my wife got COVID, and we all got COVID, and she was very ill. She was at home. She was on oxygen. She battled, and I had to look after all of us. Um, and the children jumped in and they helped. But it was a difficult time. But we had wonderful friends and family who supported us. And then another family member passed away suddenly, and then another family passed away from COVID, and all of this in the last 7 weeks. So it's been a difficult one, and it's been traumatic, and we've really felt COVID right up in our faces. And a lot of the other family members also had COVID. So and some were in varying degrees of illness. But I must tell you, so it's come very close to home, the trials and the suffering, and the questions that then arise from this is what do I do with this? So there are spiritual questions, and we'll look at those ones later, Christian or whatever questions that people ask about suffering. But for me now, it is asked. The question is, how do I get through this, survive, and then if it's possible to thrive, how can I thrive? Now, when you're in the middle of the suffering, you don't necessarily think of thriving. You're trying to just keep your head above water and to survive. So I understand that it's not easy, and that no trial, as the word says, in the moment brings any joy or looks like something that is going to help you. But when it has come to fruition, when it has fulfilled its purpose, then it brings a peaceable fruit of righteousness. It's like discipline that the Lord brings. Now, I'm not saying all trials are discipline, but I'm saying that there, in the moment, it's painful and you cannot necessarily see the benefits. But as you deal with it and you work with it in your moment and you work through it, that's when, in the end, at some point, when you turn back and you look back, you'll experience the growth. And you will become stronger as you face more and more challenges and work through it this way. Challenges and trials will always be hard, but it might become easier to deal with them. I've experienced this in my own life. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's as if the response that I have to trials have been more ingrained, to be more effective and more biblical than it used to be. So, and that helps me a lot quicker to get back up on my feet and to grow. So it's been a hard year then for us, especially the beginning of 2021 and the ending of 2020. And we don't know what the rest of the year holds. So then the question is, what do we do from here? How do I get to a place where it's no longer just uncertainty, fear, stress, and radical change, but how do I get to a place where there's thriving and growing? Now, I read this quote on a Focus on the Family article where it said that there was a man who would take long walks every day. And he said a very striking thing. He said, there's no such thing as bad weather, only improper clothing. So the weather will change. There'll be days with good weather. There'll be days with so-so weather, moderate weather, and there'll be days with rain. That's great in South Africa, but not in England. And there'll be thunder, and there'll be winter weather and droughts and whatever. There'll be tough weather. So it's about getting proper clothing. In Africa, it's about getting sunshades and being protected from the harsh weather. And up in the north of the hemisphere, it's about being protected against the ice freezing cold. So it is how you respond to the situation around you that determines whether you are going to survive or thrive. So, and thrive, so it's, or maybe not survive through it. So in there lies the key. It is dressing appropriately. So now, if you've been in the weather and it was terrible, then it is reacting appropriately to respond to the weather situation. So you don't go outside not being properly dressed. I want to share some thoughts with you from Dr. Daniel Brown from the UK, who really did a thorough study of thriving. And he came out with this conclusion. He said, thriving appears to come down to an individual experiencing a sense of development, of getting better at something, and succeeding and mastering something. In the simplest terms, what underpins it is feeling good about life and yourself and being good about at something, being good at something. So thriving goes about experiencing success, experiencing development, experiencing growth through something or mastering something. Now, when you're going through a difficult time like 2020 and 2021, it does not necessarily seem like you are mastering something or succeeding. I think the idea here is to grow through the suffering, through the trial, and and if you're not going through a trial at the moment, or 2020 was not a bad year for you, no worries. Trouble will come someday, and you will. So be prepared. Rather find out about the weather in Canada, and don't rock up there with your summer clothing from South Africa. You'll die. So this is an opportunity for you to be prepared then, and to rather get the mental grit and the frame of mind so that you can approach your suffering when it does happen. Usually people react in the usual stress ways. They either freeze, they fight, or they try and flee. So, or in work terms, people would get to a place where they either procrastinate, that's the freezing, and they try and avoid things. So, or the overworking, they go into a fight mode and they just try and solve all the problems as quick as possible. So the idea here would rather be, if you look at psychology, it would be to rather work strategically, logically, and systematically. So try and figure out what's going on, and what can I do in this situation to make it better, and so that I can adapt to the situation instead of just being thrown to and fro with the situation. Now, I understand trauma as we've experienced it over the last couple of weeks is hard. I mean, it stuns you. It knocked me. Can't say that I am okay at the moment. I'm dealing with what I'm feeling. I'm acknowledging it. I'm trying to work with it, and I do have my days then where I just feel emotional, or where I just feel like I don't know what's going on or what I have to do. So I do have the days where I'm just dizzy. It's just hit me so hard, and so yeah, you will not. I'm not saying here that you go through suffering or you go through this difficult time and then suddenly you feel, man, you just got to cope with this and you got to be strong and positive. So I'm not saying you. Otherwise, this becomes a burden to say, yeah, if you're not like this, I mean, then you're weak, or only the fit, strongest will survive. Survival of the fittest. What I'm saying here is that it's about dealing with the trial that comes your way, and it is hard. And you will fight, you will flight, you will freeze, you will do those things, and you will cry. And some days you might feel like giving up. And then we'll see that with the biblical examples as well. But then it is then after that how you respond. So in psychology terms, they want to look at adaptability. So it comes from the Darwinian concepts of adapting to your environment, which makes sense if you're in Canada. I mean, wear your jackets and your snow clothing, and if you're in Africa, put on those sun creams. I mean, the African sun is harsh. So adapt to the environment, think strategically, don't just footer into it, don't just knock on and do whatever you feel like. We'll get to that. But now, the psychologists identified a few enablers. Interesting. They say that there are factors that contribute to people experiencing that thriving. Now, some of these factors are in a combination, so it's not necessarily all of them. But if you can identify some of these, and you think, I want to work on this, or hey, I want to add this to my mental approach to life. So one of the start there is having a positive outlook on life. Now that seems very simple. It seems that a storm is brewing here on our side. Having a positive outlook on life, just be optimistic, man. It sounds very simple, but it is meant to be simple. It means it's either positive or negative or neutral. I mean, it can't be anything else. It's meaning you decide how you are going to approach it or how you're going to see it. Now, I used to be a negative person from the word go. It's actually part of my temperament, but I really work hard on then actively going against it. But I find myself moaning and groping as well. And then at some point I suddenly realize, hey, this is getting you into a depressive hole. Interestingly, psychology says being religious or spiritual is another aspect. So go, man, go. Tell you, being a Christian's truth, it works. Having a proactive personality, oh, that was the opposite of mine. I was like passive and reactive. That means the world happens to you. You don't happen to the world. No, this was not easy to change, and I still have to work on this. I think it's a daily thing. Being proactive, seeing things before they happen, and even or reacting quickly and trying to do something about it. So it can be part of your personality, but it can also be part of your skill set. You can learn this. Obviously difficult, but a trial can foster this in you. Difficult time can force you to become more proactive, to be more motivated, to work at your motivation, to work at how you talk to yourself, to be committed to learning and expanding your knowledge, not just of a specific academic area or your expertise or whatever it is in your workplace, but also being learning and expanding your knowledge of life and experiences and skills and people and how to deal with it. I mean, a trial offers you a lot of opportunity to grow. Now, when we went through this, I mean, I was tired emotionally. It's in my holiday. I'm already tired from the year's work, and my whole family is suffering. And I have skills to support my family. Um, and part of it was learning to how to deal with this whilst I'm not okay. And also not to just retract within myself and just go into self-care, but also looking out for others. It's a learning curve. They say being psychologically resilient is a personal enabler. It's such a nice, be resilient, man, bounce back. But being resilient is something that it's all part of all of this. Resilience is something that you work at. It's something, yes, some people are more resilient than others, but it's also what you put in, yeah, what goes into your mind and into your heart. And then they say being socially competent. That means being surrounded by family, friends, colleagues, people who are supportive. Interesting. We'll get back to that. And then there's contextual enablers that enable a thriving person. It's being in a situation wherein the challenges are at an adequate level compared to your capabilities. So you're not overwhelmed with everything. You can still handle it, or you have something that you can do to enable you to handle it. Having interpersonal relationships based on attachment and trust. Can't underscore that. That is so important. Just having people who care for you, that you trust, that is incredibly important. Receiving support from them, you could see it again, and having a high degree of autonomy and receiving that from the people around you as well is being autonomous, but also receiving autonomy. So not being under this domineering person who's controlling you, and being trusted as well by other people as a competent person, because that enables you to act out and to do your things and to assert yourself in your environment, so you don't get a lot of negative feedback that's not accurate. So that is the environment. So if you don't have that environment, that is something that we'll then look at it. Those are also challenges to your thriving, but it does not mean that you won't be able to thrive. So I've been in situations where I did not have that environment with me. It was actually the opposite. It was a destructive environment. So it made it harder. It's like you're trying to climb the mountain, but it's snowing, raining, and there's a massive stormy wind. So the environment doesn't really help. It's not this wind from behind. Okay, so I'm going to give you some ideas on this, and it might be short ideas, but I think it's powerful enough. So the idea here to move from just merely surviving to thriving will then enable a lot of these ideas will entail a lot of these ideas. So you add all of them together. It's like you're baking a cake. So you need to respond rather than react. So it is, you will be triggered by all of these things, and you will a lot of triggers will go off when you go through suffering and trials and sudden losses. Like, I mean, the sudden loss, it triggers stuff with you. And what is important then is to start to reflect on yourself. You need to start to reflect with your own, what happens in your body, what happens in your mind when you are in this situation. Where are you at emotionally? Ask yourself that. I mean, it's important to have that insight, to find yourself, to be able to also share it with other people. Now, obviously, it's people who you trust. Um, so where am I at the moment? What is happening with me? What can I do at the moment? If you have a very strong reaction, if you've got panic or you've got fear or you are immobilized, what do you need to do to just calm down and be contained? What can you do to minimize some of those impacts of the triggers? I mean, some triggers you can stay away from, like the news. You can stay away from those triggers. But also working with your own triggers, just being aware of them and then acknowledging them, not judging yourself for having them, and then thinking about what you're going to do. So if you're emotional, you need to just let your emotions subside for a moment, try to calm down, get to a peaceful place, and then start to think, okay, what's happening? Where am I at? What's happening around me? And then try to think of what is the next step that I need to take, just the next step. So it's responding. And it's also about replenishing something that you give out. So now you're in this difficult situation. I mean, over the last 7 weeks, we've had so many, the one shock after the other. And during those times, I still had to go exercise and I spent time with the Lord. We're going to talk about those things. So you need to put back what you take out. Now, it's difficult when you are very tired or when people depend on you. Or when you feel like you cannot do this. Some people with depression feel, I just don't have the strength to do it. But you need to put something back. Let's be very frank here. If you have diarrhea, not a nice thought, but if you have it, you need to be hydrated because you are dehydrating. Similarly with your emotions and with your physical body. So you do need to add those precious resources in. And instead of blaming others in your environment, you need to start and say, okay, what is there that I can do to take care of me? Now, we'll look at a nice quote a bit later on. So the question would also be, in this time, what calms me down, what energizes me? And I need to do this now. What worked for me in the past, what will work for me now? What am I seeing, feeling, and doing at the moment that's not working? Because what I used to do then is I would say, okay, no, this is not working for me. I am. I used to actually spend time wasting some of the time that I could spend with energizing or relaxing, or I would just either spend it on mindless things that didn't really help me, or being in discussions with people on negative topics and those things. So I stopped all of those things. I did find myself like a pendulum. I mean, I was here, the trauma knocked us, I was here. It took me a while to find this focus. But because I was dealing with this throughout the year last year and the years before, I've been trained through all of these trials in life, and I've had many of them, that there was immediately, it's as if there was this underlying schema that kicked in that said, look, this is how you're going to deal with it. You can't just, you know, just flow along, go along with the flow. You need to react, you need to do something, you need to think. And then it was also about finding out what at that moment you cannot deal with. So it's also about figuring out what drains your energy and how can you minimize it then. And then it's about thinking about your thinking. So this is a huge one. I think this is the main thing, is thinking about your thinking. And you find your thinking through your words as well, and through your attitude. You will find that there's something in your mind that is negative. So if you find yourself down and depressed or frustrated, go and look at why you're feeling like that. And what is your attitude? What is your attitude? It's not just other people's attitude. So if you're going to go into a blaming stance, you are sure to never arrive at thriving. You will arrive at thriving from other suffering, meaning you will not go to a place of genuine thriving. You will take other people's joy. Um, you'll become bitter. That's interesting that for you to develop that cognitive agility, that thinking ability to bounce back, you will have to work with your thinking. Psychology has a lot to say about that. And it has a lot to say about falling into the pattern where you just allow fear to take over. Now, I'm not saying that some people have fears and fears come from a lot of trauma. And I understand that there's exceptions to this rule, but usually fear is fostered as well in your mind by how you feed it. So it's also, and I know I'm reducing it and simplifying it, but in the end, you need to start to look at what you are saying as well. Fear is also an emotionally conditioned response, meaning you feel this because of a lot of things that happen to you. But you can also then work with your thinking, and that is hope. Um, you also would like to look at other people around you and how you can take people along towards thriving so that not just you thrive, but that you get to a place of thriving along with others. So it's not just about your well-being and health. And that's where it takes your mind off of yourself and onto others. Now you can go and have a look. And don't know how many of you know the acronym SMART when you set goals, the specific, measurable, attractive, realistic time-framed goals. Um, make you need to set goals for yourself for this year. Now, when you are going through a trying time, your goal should not be to run a marathon if you've not set foot outside the house in 6 months, in your jogging shoes. So rather just make it a very small, doable, achievable task. That is the next step. And try to create goals for you for all your areas of life, your physical health, your mental health, your relationships, your all of those areas. You need to have a specific measurable goal, something that you can do at the moment. So I did not put pressure on myself to be this exercise often during December and January. I just kept on doing stuff, just kept on walking, going to the gym, just not a lot of pressure, just keep going. And that's the idea, just keep on going. It's when you stop and you sit, that's when the trouble comes. So it is to go and have a look at the next step. There's real practical things here as well. I drink loads of water. I've just a little liters of it. Yes, I wee a lot as well, but it is good for me. I don't smoke, so it's my break. But what you do is you need practical things. Get sunshine. If you don't have sunshine in your country, go to another country. We've got lots of sunshine. We don't have other things, but we have sunshine. The idea here is that it lowers your anxiety, it ups your vitamin D, it ups your immune system response. Now, a lot of those things is just get outside into nature. Go and have a look. Nature is designed to calm you down. Yeah, don't go and sit in a tiger cage or whatever. Don't just go into a nice calm place. And then also focus on starting to breathe and try to also be in the moment. Now, these are the psychological things. And then try to start to focus on all the good things in your life. So it's a gratitude shift that you make. I woke up the other morning and I could feel that I wanted to go to the pain and the suffering, the thoughts of loss, because I mean, I was friends with my wife's cousin, and we knew her aunt very well and loved her, and my mother-in-law was so close to me. So I wanted to go to the place where I would cry, but I decided to say, okay, what is there in my life now that I want to say thank you for the Lord? And I started to think on those things, and it did make a difference. It did not change everything, but all of these things together makes a difference. Then it is control what is controllable. So there'll be lots of things you can't control, especially this COVID. You can't control it, but you can control your response to it to a degree as well. Instead of just becoming flustered and frustrated and out of balance, it will happen. Also, then, once you're there, start to say, okay, what is there that I can do today to make it a little bit better as I am moving towards making it better? We can't, a lot of this is dealing with what's coming your way. You can prepare for some of the things, but you can't prepare for all of it. It is about dealing with it in the moment. I mean, it is about handling it now. It's not about being this perfect human that feels happy all the time, has no troubles and suffering, and is just so psychologically magnificent. It's about dealing with the stress. It's about being real, building relationships, and then learning to trust the Lord. So we'll have a look at that, and then rest, rest, rest. I'm working with a couple of my clients at the moment to just get to bed before 12 at night. Get to bed before 12, sleep. Sleep is basic. If you can't sleep, get help to sleep. It is huge. Another thing, take care of your gut. 90% of serotonin is released in your gut, and all of those things. So you need fish, chicken, eggs, all those things. You need to figure out how to look after your gut. Now, I'm not a dietitian or a health expert. I'll get somebody on here who can help us with that. But gut health is huge. Now, I also like sweets and I like chocolates, and I do those things as well, comfort food. But you do need to do all of those. You do need a healthy diet as well. And then you do need the other practical things as well. Reading a book, going away. So this coming weekend, me and my wife's going away. We're just taking a break. And then there's a bigger one, keeping the big picture in mind. Um, when you are reading a book, it is divided up into chapters, and those chapters are divided up into pages. So your life is similar. There are chapters, and there are pages, and there's an ending to this chapter, and a new chapter will begin. And every chapter will have good and bad in it. So this chapter will end as well. If you look back at history, a lot of chapters came and gone, and a lot of our parents and their parents went in their lifetimes had good and bad times, and they all went through it. Now the question is just how do you go through it? So we'll all have those. So there'll be a big picture here. The story is not finished yet. The chapter is not finished, but at some point it will be finished, and then a new chapter will begin. So you're not going to be stuck in this chapter on pause mode forever. It's not really a nightmare. Define what you determine as important. Um, so this is important when you go through this year. You need to figure out what do you see as success, and what is really success. What does success really look like for you? Is it there's a quote: if you cannot define it, you cannot resource it. So you need to figure out how do you see success this year, whether it's emotional, physical health, healthy relationships, better grades. So set those goals, but define it clearly. What is it that you want? For me, success was building relationships, being faithful at my work, and trying to spend time with the Lord and to listen to Him. For those are practical, and just to keep my other things going, um, and to keep on going. That was also a success for me. So success is not necessarily all these huge achievements. It's already an achievement to deal with it. But if you can set if you can set specific goals, it'll help you. And also, you can also celebrate where you've already come, and that also is coupled with celebration and praise is all in one. And you celebrate that you've been through this, that you are in this, and the Lord is with you. You have an opportunity to learn about Him in a new way. Whereas when you're in heaven, you learn other things of Him, but you cannot really learn God's faithfulness in suffering if you're in heaven. Then Jordan Peterson, I heard this quote from him. I've not read the book 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos, but I'd like to read it. He's not specifically a Christian, but I think some of his rational thinking is good, and I do appreciate his conservative outlook on some things and challenging the chaotic liberal thinking that goes around. Where it says, treat yourself like someone you are responsible for helping. So if you're helping somebody or you're looking after your dog, he also uses an example of looking after an animal. We really do look after our animals. Some of us don't, but some of us, we mostly look after our animals well. Or when you do look after somebody else, you try to look after them well. I know some of you selfish buggers don't do that, but most of you do. But it is treat yourself like someone that you are responsible for helping. I never did that, so I'm better at that now, but I'm still growing there. But that is something to think about, isn't it? So it's looking after others and treating them and trying to get their welfare, but then also doing the same for yourself. And then talking to someone. Hear this quote from Maggie Smith. She says, "Be brave enough to ask for help when you need it. There is no merit badge for doing all the hard things alone. Reach out, keep moving. Reach out to other people. There's not going to be any award for somebody who did all of these things on their own. No, it's a team. We're a team here, and as the body of Christ, we're living together. But if you're a leader in the body of Christ, you might, or a leader in a company, or whatever, you might find isolation to be a difficult one, because who do you mingle with? Who do you share with? But then you need to find those outside of your organization, but you do need people to share with. It keeps you accountable, but it also keeps you humble, real, but it gives you desperately needed perspective and emotional support, and even physical support, sometimes even financial support. The God uses this body to strengthen his body. And then, interesting, cultivate a strong character. Did you know Mark Twain said, it is curious that physical courage should be so common in the world and moral courage so rare. Our moral courage being a reflection of our character. And that these times in 2021 actually call to be brave and resolute, and that we need to now stand up for what we believe in and to be willing to sacrifice for things, and regardless of the cost. So it's to say that this suffering might it might lead me to make difficult decisions, to say no to certain things, opportunities, and to say yes, and especially as a Christian, to stand up, be willing to sacrifice for others as well, and for the Lord. It's a big one, eh? And to show moral courage as well. And then there's another practical thing that's so interesting. Did you know that research shows that the people who are more resilient at work, under stress, and who are more effective, those are the people who actually have a hobby and an interest outside of their work. So it is very interesting that from arts, music, sports, friendships, whatever it is, you need to have that transition into a hobby and to have that counterbalance. Okay, so psychology sees a crisis as a challenging situation with opportunity to make it better, or you can make it worse. So when your reaction to your environment is what makes the difference. You can become hardened to a fear response, but you can also grow and then be better off when the next storm comes. Now then, now what they would sum it up as: choose your response because it will have consequences. You will respond. You cannot not respond, and it will have consequences. So you need to decide your response. So going over into a second section here, that it would be what does the Bible say about thriving? Does the Bible have anything to say about thriving? Because we hear a lot about suffering. And the question is then, maybe this is not the best question. It is actually, what does the Bible say about coping through suffering? Now, I'm going to read this scripture verse that you will know off by heart if you're a Christian. James 1 verse 2 to 4 says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Ooh, this is so jam-packed with stuff. But you can see that there's a choice in here. Consider it joy when you face the trial. So you are in the trial and you are facing it, and many kinds of trials. And you know that this trial acts as a test to your faith. But you will find development, as psychology has said. And what does it develop? It develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work. That means it is a process. It is not just a once-off thing. So that you may be maturity, and complete, lacking nothing. So that is major. So it actually benefits you because it creates maturity and it makes you complete. So something is added through this trial where you feel something is taken away. So we feel that something is taken away and something is stolen or broken, but something's actually added here, and it's maturity, it's character, it's completeness. Now, psychology just focuses on you and how you grow and thrive through this. So it's person-centered, but the Bible is Christ-centered, God-centered. So it means you're complete in your faith. In whom? In the Lord. So it's about the Lord here. It's about your vision of the Lord that actually is enhanced, your faith So that means your trust in him is growing. Now, people have three questions during trials. When will this trial end? Why is this trial happening to me? And how can I counter joy when it is so hard during a trial? So those are three very important questions. And we're going to try and answer those, but I might not be able to, but I'm going to try. So when will this trial end? We don't know when the trial will end, and it's realistic to say that. It's also realistic to say, like I said, this too shall pass. But I think the question is not the best question. When this trial will end is not the best question. It's rather, how can I change my focus, or where should I put my focus during this trial? Because we know it'll end. If it does not end, you're going to end. I mean, at some point you're going to die too, and then the trial will end. But it's rather about, where should I put my foot next? If you're climbing the mountain, where's my next place where I should land my foot? Am I still on the trail? Not that I am in the trial. Am I on the trail? Am I still heading in the right direction? Or have I got lost? Am I still following the leader? Those are the questions one should rather ask. The other question, why is this happening to me? That's a hard one. It is something that you can ask to the Lord. Difficult to get answers there, because it happens to all of us. Different types of trials. We all have different trials. So it seems like trials are universal. Some of us have lots of trials. And some don't. Some have little trials, or seemingly little trials, but we all have trials, and we all experience it subjectively as bad. So in our own minds, when we rate our trial, it is actually 90 out of 100 in the suffering scale. So it is bad for all of us. But if I see a street child in Johannesburg or in India, I mean, my heart goes out to them, and I can place myself in their situation and think, oh, it must be hard. But they're in their situation, and they don't know how it is to be in a 5-star hotel in New York, or whatever it is. But some people have been in a 5-star hotel in New York, and now they're on the streets. Whatever it is, your trial is your trial. So there's, again, this question leads you into a rabbit hole. It is rather, when this is happening to me, what should be my response? Again. And then there's, how can I count joy? We'll have a look at that as we go through. So the first idea here I would land with you is, expect hard times. Expect it, meaning the Bible is not even vague about this. It says in 1 Peter 4 verse 12, "Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal which is taking place to test you, to test the quality of your faith, as though something strange or unusual were happening to you." So, I mean, it says, no one be so surprised. So, I mean, we've had lots of trouble the last 7 weeks, and we prayed for all three of those people, and all three passed away. So what do I do with that? Do I now still believe that God heals, or do I say, Lord, why is this happening to us? Friends of ours also struggling with cancer, other friends. So we've got lots of, so the question is not why, the question is, it is here, what do I do now? So then that leads to the next one. You choose to rejoice. You don't actually rejoice out of just a natural reaction. That's not going to happen. That's happiness. If I give you $1 million, you will be happy. But if I give you a trial, you will have to choose to be happy. It's not going to be natural. You will have to choose it. But you can also choose to moan and groan and wallow. You can really choose it. Go and have a look at Joni Erickson Tada's testimony. She after an accident at 17 years old, she became a quadriplegic. She's now 71 years old. She's inspiring people, making huge difference. She's chosen to rejoice. Now, how do you rejoice? What do you rejoice in? It sounds rather mentally ill if you say rejoice because you're suffering. It doesn't sound healthy. So 1 Peter 4 verse 13, the next verse actually says, "But insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, keep on rejoicing, so that when his glory is revealed, you may rejoice with great joy." He also suffered. You're suffering as well, but now God can use this suffering. You are rejoicing in the hope that you have, that you're not alone in this suffering, that you don't orchestrate. You are not greater than suffering. He is. He loves you, and he can orchestrate the suffering in order to build Christ's image in you. Romans 8:28 says that God can make all things work. It works together for the good. But in the end, you'll see that God blesses and justifies those whom he chooses. But he also works Christ's image in them. So he uses this as an eternal glory to him and an eternal blessing to you. It is huge. So you rejoice in the fact that you are not alone, that God's promises are still true, that he is faithful. So we'll have a look at those things. 2 Corinthians 8 verse 2 to 3 says, For in a severe test of affliction, again the word test, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. For they gave according to their means, as I can testify, and beyond their means of their own accord. Meaning they were in a severe test of affliction, and they had abundance of joy with extreme poverty. Sounds intense, and it means that somehow they did not look at their circumstances, but they looked at the Lord, and they looked at the opportunities they had. So they were rejoicing in the fact that even though they are suffering, the Lord is faithful and they can do something for the Lord as well. Now, another practical thing that I found as I was praying in this last 7 weeks, I was asking the Lord, and I would find my own weaknesses. My flesh would come out. I would become irritable with my family sometimes, not all the time, but I did. And I would fall into old habits, sinful habits. And as I was praying, the Lord just called me and said, spend time with me, spend time with me. And as I was preparing for this talk, I mean, it was just highlighted again. Spend time with the Lord. Where is your focus? Are you just going into distractions? Or are you binging on series? Not bad. I also checked out a few series, but what comes first? What do you put in your mind first and in your spirit? Do you go to the Lord first? Now, obviously, when you're tired and you're emotional, it's even hard to hear his voice sometimes, but you're there, you're praying, you're in a mindset of praying, you're reading the word. Although it feels like just like words, the word is living and stronger than any two-edged sword. It is amazing. It is alive. It'll change you. So it is about choosing to prioritize time with him as the highest priority, and time with his children, so that it's not the culture around you that is influencing you the most. It's the word and the Lord. So pressing into him. So you actually lessen the distractions, the YouTube and whatever. But I also struggled with it. But then more interactions with the Lord. So it is about prioritizing that. And then it's also about finding those moments where he is blessing you in the trial, where you find the love of other people, the love of the body of Christ around you. We did. And it was beautiful to see the Lord at work in the middle of this trial, and I'm still experiencing it. Those can lead me to say thank you. And then moving on from what ifs, all those what ifs, those fearful thoughts. What is the future? Or what's going to happen next? We actually found ourselves saying, one of the family members said, who's next? Who's going to die next? And then 2 people died after that still. And then who's next? Who's next? So we don't know who's next. Someone is next, yes. It might be today, tomorrow, it might be in 20 years' time. I think the question is again rather, Lord, what do you say? Lord, where are you? Lord, what does your word say in this moment? So not asking the questions of what is going to happen in the future, Lord, or rather, Lord, what are you saying? Where are you? And then remembering that God is not condemning you in this time. Because spending time with the Lord can then sometimes also, if you don't view the word accurately, you might even see a lot of rules and even feel more burdened after it. But actually the word is there to draw strength from. The Lord says, I'm with you. Nothing can separate you from my love. I will not leave you or forsake you, even though you feel like it. So the word is there it does challenge your flesh, but it is there to strengthen you. And there will be people around you that you can connect with, people that you can strategically connect with. So reach out to people that you know will make a difference to your life now, that you need their perspective, you need their insight, wisdom. Ask the Lord to use them. And then try to be that person for somebody else as well. Psychology is clear on this. When you are in a difficult time, it is healthy to reach out to others and to also focus on other people's problems. Let's have a look at, throughout all of this, you will receive and you will find priceless spiritual treasures throughout these losses. But so it is choosing, am I going to focus on my emotions or am I going to focus on God's word? Am I actively going to and purposefully set my mind on the promises of the Lord and seek to be reminded of them? That does not mean you ignore your emotions or negate them or dismiss them or belittle them. You can acknowledge them, but be careful. Just talking about your emotions can get you stuck in that space. So it is important to voice when you're feeling something, but then add God's perspective to it, because otherwise it becomes a reality. Just you need to voice it. I've had that. I was honest. People would ask me, "How are you doing?" And I'd say, "I'm tired. I'm feeling sad. Um, my body is tired. My emotions are tired. I feel drained. I don't feel like this anymore." And if I find myself becoming negative, I would or moaning or whining, victim, I would also have to acknowledge that to myself and then work with that. But it is very important not just to keep on venting emotions and think that's going to bring relief. It will bring you into a deep hole. Let's look at 3 people in the Bible. Okay. The first one is Job, obviously the epitome of suffering and getting to a place of thriving. I mean, he went through hell and back. That was difficult. But to sum up Job's thing here, what he learned was trusting God's sovereignty and purposes, even though he did not understand it. And when he was in interaction with God, he spoke up, but he was silent and submissive and honest, and he was listening. And he did not get all the answers, but he got the blessings and the approval of the Lord. And it's amazing. And he got revelation, understanding of the Lord. So this was something to be learned here. So it's a different question as to why you're going through this. That's what his friends tried to answer. And the Lord did not like that. So he was rather listening and trusting, even though he didn't understand. And then Joseph, who kept on trusting God throughout being the suffering that he received, he did not even cause. He didn't. It came at him. It was a lot of injustice, and it kept on for years. But he ended with saying, "You intended to harm me, but God intended this for good, to help other people as well." So remember that God is intending this for good. The devil or the world or whatever may intend this for harm, or even other people in your life, but God is intending this for good. So you keep on trusting the Lord and keep on serving Him. You could see Joseph was running away from sin to the Lord, but he would also had his times of doubt. But it was important for me that there was hope. He was clinging to hope, like Job was also clinging to God's promises and to God Himself. And then King David, he went through lots of trials, and he multiple times he said how he was surrounded by death. But he kept trusting God as well. And throughout his cries and his tears and his poems of agony, he actually prophesied. So without knowing it, my God, why have you forsaken me? That became Christ's words at the cross. So in his crisis, he was actually prophesying about Christ. So the Lord even used that. So we don't know how big God is. We just need to trust this loving, just, righteous Father. And then it is, in the end, make it your aim to learn to depend on the Lord more and more. Like a tree that deepens their roots, and a plant that goes into to break through the levels of the ground to get to a place where there's nourishment. This is what it does for you. When you go through suffering, it needs to be your aim to learn to depend, to rest, to trust in the Lord, to cast those cares, to say, Lord, what is your word? What does your word say about worry? I want to testify of something. It's about 7 years that I've now walked a road of really trusting God with finances, out of the boat, on the water, radical. And through these 7 years, it was a tough time. It was hard to learn to trust, but I found the benefit of it during the last few months. Just letting go, just asking the Lord for my needs and just trusting him and letting it go, focusing my mind on what is next. And it was usually serving others in the moment. So I want to end off with a quote from an article of Got Questions. It's a long quote, so it's about 2 paragraphs, but I want to read it to you. So it says in Romans 28:28, it contains those comforting words for those enduring hardship and suffering. We know that in all these things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. In his providence, God orchestrates every event in our lives, even suffering, temptation, and sin. It doesn't mean he causes it always, but he is sovereignly in control, and he orchestrates those things to accomplish both our temporal and eternal benefit and his glory. Christians serve a God who has lived on this earth and endured trauma, temptation, bereavement, torture, hunger, thirst, persecution, and even execution. The cross of Christ can be regarded as the ultimate manifestation of God's justice. When asked how much God cares about the problem of evil and suffering, the Christian God can point to the cross and say that much. Christ experienced physical pain as well as feelings of rejection and abandonment, and he experienced the same suffering as many people today who know the bitterness of isolation, pain, and anguish. So knowing that you're not alone, the Lord is with you, and that he knows, he understands the pain that you're going through, and that he will walk with you through this. And that being your shepherd, he walks in front of you, but he also walks behind you. He's around you, and he will take you through this step by step. You don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to know everything. Just follow him and take the next step. I will spend some more time on some of these topics next time. You're welcome to post a few questions for me as well. It was great spending time with you. God bless. See you I think it's the 25th of February for our next live event. Cheers. Bye-bye.